Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have Larry Roberts joining me right now via the internet. Larry is the host of the One Big Win podcast and the founder of Readily Random Media. Larry, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Ruben. This is so cool, dude.
Awesome. I appreciate you doing this. You are literally going to be my first guest on this new podcast, Ruben J and Friends, and I'm super excited to be launching this with somebody like yourself who is a leader in the podcast community. So thank you so much for doing this. Let's start right at the beginning here, because you do have a new podcast out yourself. You launched it with a ton of great episodes and some great guests. It's called One Big Win. It's a new podcast. So first of all, why did you decide to launch a new podcast, and what happened with the Readily Random podcast?
Well, nobody was listening to Readily Random, so I thought if I rebranded and relaunched, maybe somebody would jump on board. No, that's not it at all. No, the reason I did it was because I wanted to get more niche. You know, I speak on several platforms, and many times I'll say that you need to niche if you want to have a successful podcast. But I'm sitting there telling people that they need to niche down. And the name of my show is Readily Random. That's kind of backwards, isn't it? It's do as I say, not as I do type scenario. So I knew I had kind of shot myself in the foot when I named the show what I named it. But I also, I formed an LLC around the name. So Readily Random Media is still my company, and it will continue to be my company. But as you said, the name of the podcast is now One Big Win, and it is brand new. I mean, I started it from scratch. It wasn't that I just changed the name of Readily Random. It is a brand new show, and it's all about finding those moments in our life and recognizing the opportunity that they present, putting them into motion, and taking a step closer to our life mastery. So moments in motion to mastery is what it's all about.
Now, when you were, vetting the people who ultimately became the first round of guests for your podcast, what were you taking into account? Because I think it's something super important for people who maybe are sitting at home wondering, hey, I want to start a podcast about pottery, as an example, and I really want people to become pottery masters. How did you vet these people? What were you looking for? And how do you feel now that you've released a bunch of episodes? How do you feel that those guests lined up to what your expectations were?
Oh, I think all of them lined up exactly as I had hoped. And what I was looking for was a story, was something that they could share that was an experience that the audience could learn from. It wasn't just sit here and listen. It was listen, learn, recognize, and then take action. That was the goal behind each and every one of the guests that I had online. Now, one or two of them, actually, I ended up interviewing through another company, and I loved what it became so much that I went ahead and included them as well. So there are a couple of variations on that theme, but that's the primary objective that I had when selecting these folks.
Now, this is something that I'm not sure if at the time of the recording is public, but by the time this is published, will probably be public for you. And if you don't want to talk about this, we can cut this out. But I know that you're going full-time podcaster come this month, January. Tell me a little bit more about that transition. Are you scared? Are you nervous? Are you excited? Because obviously it's a big leap if you're used to having a 9-to-5 type job. And I don't really know much about you outside of your podcasting world, so I don't know what your current work situation is like. But tell me a little bit about that transition that you're preparing for now at recording. But again, by the time this is published, you'll be a couple of days into being a full-time podcaster.
It's public knowledge right now, so not a big deal at all. I've put in my notice of retirement with the company that I work for, and they all seem to be fairly supportive of the idea as well. So it's like, finally, the dude's getting out of here. I've been there 21 years, dude. 21 years.
That's awesome.
I think the anniversary is in 2 days for the official 21st year. But yeah, that's a long time to be with one company, and it's not something you hear about too often anymore these days. And, I've seen a lot. I've worn a lot of hats. I work in the IT department. I'm a business intelligence analyst, meaning I just absorb and look at data all day is pretty much what my job amounts to. But I've enjoyed it. I've learned a lot over the years. I've grown. I mean, come on. I mean, I was in my 20s when I started there. So I actually became, an adult and a man, if you would, during my time there at the company. So it's a scary transition, very scary, because you go from having a guaranteed paycheck with nice little bonuses thrown at you every once in a while. And it's guaranteed to going, you know what? I appreciate the money, but I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna try to earn my own money. And yeah, it's scary to go from that level of stability. And that's all I've known my entire life, honestly, is that level of stability as an adult. And taking in and exploring these options on my own, scary, but also very freeing. It feels very free, feels very exciting, feels very new, very fresh, very invigorating. It's an opportunity for me to express me. Although my job, my career has been great, it's not something that I was able to express myself in very often, because it ended up taking kind of an unexpected turn. When I started working for the company, I was a corporate trainer. And after a couple of years there, a need arose for a trainer in the IT department. And I transitioned up there. And then once that need expired, thankfully, my position didn't expire. But then I started getting into data and data management. And, you know, that's not really my gig. I mean, it's not something that I'm really, really all that good at, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm good, but I'm not. There's definitely people that are in the department that crush me. But over the years, I've developed what we like to call tribal knowledge. And it's that knowledge of the business, knowledge of how things work, knowledge of how we do business that you can't get without putting in the time and the exposure and the experience of being there. So although I may not be the cat daddy when it comes to business intelligence, I do have that backup support that's very, very valuable as well. And a lot of our department's pretty green. So I kind of feel bad making that transition because that knowledge isn't going to be there. But I mean, I'm sure they'll survive. I don't want to make myself sound like I'm the end all be all, but
Well, I think it's important for everyone to know that at some point in life, the person who is, an integral part of a team is not going to always be there. I mean, there might be a day where, they do retire, they move on to someone else, or that position is eliminated. So it's awesome that you're able to leave on your terms, especially in this economy, although it's a weird kind of, it's weird because it's a good economy for like people who have money, but a terrible economy for like the common folk. Like I was listening to somebody say earlier, and again, this is recorded a couple of weeks in advance, but someone was saying, oh yeah, if you're measuring the economy by the stock market, that means that you have money in the stock market. I'm just like, that could be true, but most of us know people who are out of work and whatever. So congratulations on the retirement. Sure. Congratulations on the transition out. Now, what are you anticipating as far as like, what do you think quarter one of 2021 is going to look like for you, going into the solo world and being kind of your own boss for the first time in your adult life, it seems like?
Truth be told, I feel like the end of quarter one is going to look like the same as the beginning of quarter one. I believe I'm still going to be primarily living off the savings that I've structured in order to make this feasible. There'll be some income coming in. I've already got some clients lined up, but I don't see me, just crushing it by the end of quarter one. If that happens, sweet. But I'm trying to look at this from a realistic perspective and kind of keep my blinders on so that I stay focused on making sure that I continually look towards the end goal and understand my priorities. My priorities are taking care of my household and feeding my wife and I and my dogs. Those are my priorities. If anything else comes into play, fine. But those are my priorities first. And so although I do have goals and I do have financial goals in place for each quarter, I think realistically speaking, end of quarter one, going to look a lot like the beginning of quarter one. Quarter two, different story. Now we're starting to get somewhere. But will we be profitable per se? I wouldn't expect that. It very well could be. But I may have very reserved expectations for the way this is going to go. And I think that's a good thing. I don't want to get out there and say, oh, I'm going to crush it. I'm going to get everybody. I'm going to have all these clients. And then turn around and have, be like Forrest Gump on the shrimp boat saying, I caught 5. It's just, that's not where I want to be.
Can you please just for the heck of it, can you just put a video out to get, with you doing that? Because that was fun for me to watch. Now, obviously, we're in the middle of a pandemic. a lot of us podcasters have driven to creating more content as a way to cope with the extra time that we had on our hands, and also having a sense of responsibility to entertain the audiences that we have. I feel like at some point, my podcast co-host and I sat down and thought to ourselves, how can we put out more content for the few, for the couple hundred people who listen to us and follow us? How can we put out more content? So obviously I'm going to throw the question to you in this way. Do you feel a responsibility as a podcast host and producer to feed your audience in times like this? Or are you more of like, I just kind of do it for the fun and the experience of doing it? Or what's your ultimate drive when it comes to podcast creation and content creation and keeping that content going?
Content creation is positive reinforcement across the board. Do I feel obligated to create content regularly? Yeah, I do. I try to go live every day. I don't always make it, but I try to go live on Facebook. I have been doing, and I don't know if you've noticed, but each and every day I've been doing these daily affirmations, for which I make into a TikTok video. So I've been doing that. I got, I think, a whole 13 followers over on TikTok as of right now.
Hey, that's more than I have.
If you're listening, head over there, check out at Big Win Pod, BIGWINPOD on the talk. Come follow me and get your daily affirmations there. But I've also been repurposing these daily affirmations for Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. I've been putting them everywhere. So to say that I feel a commitment and an obligation to create content, 1000%, most definitely.
Now, let me ask you this, because I had a friend who recently came out public with their struggles with alcohol over the last 5 years or so, and you and I had a conversation. I believe it was on our live stream that we did with you, where you had mentioned that you were sober and had gone through some sort of process there.
Sure.
Did you feel any stress or any need to kind of maybe go? Let me try to phrase this properly, because this is an awkward question to ask. But I guess, did you feel the pressure of maybe opening up a drink during quarantine, during the lockdowns, to help cope with that? And if you did, how did you either fight it? And if you didn't, what's some advice for some of these people who might be listening who are going through something similar, to be able to stay on that sober train? Because it is really tough to fight sobriety when you're all alone.
First and foremost, don't ever feel awkward about asking me a question about my sobriety. You can ask me whatever you want, and odds are I'm going to answer it. So not a lot to hide here, because the fact of the matter is, yes, I was an alcoholic. I'm one of the few where I say I was an alcoholic. Haven't had a drink since 2013. Don't plan on having a drink anytime in the future either. Did I feel a need or a desire to drink during the quarantine? Negative. I did not. To this day, even if I sit here and I'm doing it right now, if I sit here right now and I imagine the smell, much less the taste, of my alcohol of choice, which was gin, it makes my stomach cringe. It just makes it tighten up. And it's not something that I ever want again. Not even a little bit. It's just not there. Same thing with cold beer or anything else. I just don't feel the need at this stage of my life for anything like that. Once I got sober, I was committed to being sober, and I'm now sober. So it takes a lot of self-discipline, takes a tremendous support group. My wife was very supportive. My friends were very supportive. People that I would have never thought would be supportive were extremely supportive. You definitely can't do it on your own. And if you are stuck solo, if you're not married, or you don't have a partner of some sort living with you, a roommate or something to help support you through these times, can be very, very difficult. And I highly recommend that you reach out to someone. Reach out and say, hey, I'm feeling vulnerable right now. Hey, I'm feeling really depressed, and I think alcohol is the answer. Or, I just want to have a good time. And, maybe you're going to smoke a little meth or something. I don't know what it is, but the thing is reach out for the help. So many times people are scared to raise their hand and say, hey, I'm hurting right now. I'm struggling. I'm floundering. I need somebody to hold my hand, especially as dudes, because we're not supposed to say stuff like that as dudes. We're supposed to just be manly and just, I got this shit. This ain't no big. Hope I can cuss. Sorry. I got this, and it's not even a challenge. I don't need any help. Well, folks, I'll tell you right now, I needed a lot of help when I got sober, and thankfully I had a moment of clarity that made me realize after several weeks of sitting on the couch and just drinking straight up. That's it. I don't know how I was alive as long as I was, but I had a moment of clarity that said, Larry, reach out right now and get help, or tomorrow's not going to come. It was just that clear. It's the most amazing thing, because there was no question that I heard what I heard. There was no question that I had the realization, and there was no question that I needed help. So I reached out. I called my best good pal. He called the wife. The wife called some other people. Next thing you know, they're coming over, they're swooping me up, and they're taking me off to get help. And I was there for 7 weeks at the facility, and I was in the hospital prior to the facility because they couldn't manage me. I was too messed up, too dehydrated. Heart rate was crazy. They sent me to the hospital for about 3 or 4 days before I even started my stint at the rehab facility where I went. So after 6 weeks, I was supposed to leave, but there was something in me going, dude, you're just not ready. There's no way. I don't want to leave yet. I don't want to leave. And I'll be honest, a lot of it too was the security of being in a facility. I was like, wow, okay, I know I'm not going to get my drink on in here, right? So I didn't have to worry about the personal responsibility. It was being taken care of for me. But I needed to step up, and I stayed 1 more week, came to that realization, stepped out, and that's my story. So there are organizations that can help. It doesn't have to be a 12-step program. I'm not a 12-stepper myself, not a fan of it. It's just not for me. If it's for you, great. Whatever works for you, great. I'm in the state of Texas. We recently started using a program called SMART. And I say recently because it was just starting to be used back in 2013 when I was getting sober. And it stands for Self-Management and Recover Training. And what that does, it's different than your 12 steps because it has the beginning, obviously, when you start it, when you're starting to get sober, and it has an end. So you work through the program, and once you reach it, guess what? You're done. You don't have to be 55 and go into your third AA meeting of the week talking about how I'm still an alcoholic, but you hadn't had a drink in 20 years. That never made sense to me. Now, if it makes sense to you and it works for you, whatever works. I'm not passing judgment. I'm just talking about for me personally. That's what I needed. I needed a starting point. I needed a goal. I reached that goal, and I continue to live that goal each and every day.
Now, so that's a really interesting thing, because I feel like people who have gone through the process of becoming sober, cleaning their lives up, they tend to have a little bit more follow through in their goals and their projects across the board once they've become sober. Do you feel like some of the things that you learned in your process through sobriety have helped you kind of reach some professional goals that you may have set, helped you get to the point where you're at as far as a podcaster goes and a content creator goes? And is there anything that you learn in particular that you actually apply to your day-to-day when it comes to your business and your podcast?
It's interesting that you asked that, because it's really hard for me to pinpoint it, because before I started drinking and before I was an alcoholic, I had these lofty goals, and I accomplished a lot of those goals. Just about anything I put my mind to, and I'm not even going to say just about. This sounds braggadocious, but it's not. It's just if I was determined to do it, I got it done. Didn't matter what it was. I got it done. And that was something that I still hang on to this day. That's why I believe I'm going to be a success as a solopreneur in the podcasting space come 2021. So I'm pretty stoked about that. But in rehab and in the facility, I did come to grips with, I guess it sounds so cheesy, but I guess trauma, because we did go back. We did talk about every aspect of our lives, from childhood up to the moment that we're in there. And yeah, there were some things that came out that I guess I've reconciled to. And I also learned not to thrive in a state of depression. I used to be addicted to depression just as much as I was addicted to alcohol. I loved kicking rocks. I loved turning on Pink Floyd and just kicking rocks. It was what I loved to do. Why? I don't know. I don't have a clue. But the slightest little thing could put me in that Pink Floyd kind of mode, and I would eat it up. I'd watch my old movies from when I was a teenager. I'd watch Braveheart 18 times in a row. I'd watch Rocky 4, all these movies that I loved as a kid. But because I wasn't fulfilling any kind of extreme goals at that age or at the age that I was now, I love to kick rocks about it, going, "Oh man, I should have done this and I should have done that." And that's kind of what led to the alcoholism. I'm sure it was just a over time period where things just increasingly got worse.
That's interesting. I feel like I'm the same way to a certain degree when like there are days where I wake up, I'm like, I just want to be in a bad mood, and like, I'll put on the song that I know is gonna get me in a bad mood or help me get to that point of depression that I kind of want to be in for that moment. But I don't like wallowing in it, like I like to like get there and then that motivates me to get back to normal, I feel like. And I feel like, but I also think it's healthy to a certain degree to be willing to like rest with your unhappiness for a moment or your sadness for a moment. It really just depends on what you do next. Like, are you going to, wallow in it and kick rocks and just be like, I'm such a letdown. Or are you going to turn that around and be like, okay, cool. Let's get back to work. Let's, I dealt with it here in the moment. Now let me get back to work and start building that empire that I'm going towards. How do you do you still like, get in those moments where you're like, okay, I just need to listen to some Pink Floyd and get depressed and like fight back, or have you completely moved away from that?
I would say I've 95% moved away from it. It's funny because sometimes I get frustrated because I can't get to that place anymore. I'll turn on the Pink Floyd or I'll turn on because I'm just not feeling hyped at the time, or I might just not be feeling at my highest of highs at some time. And I'll go, you know what? I think it's time. And I'll put it on and it doesn't make me depressed. It doesn't take me back to that place, man. I can't get there. I was born in 72, so I like some of the older songs that are out there and some of the older bands. Big fan of Styx. I would listen to Styx. Kilroy, when Kilroy Was Here is the name of the album. And the whole album is kind of a storyline type thing, kind of like Pink Floyd The Wall. And I would listen to that and, I could always cry to that. Always. I could, yeah, it's going to happen. Guaranteed. I go, life is so miserable. I can't get there no more, man. I can't. I can't. It doesn't make me cry. It doesn't make me kick rocks. It's funny. I can listen to it and enjoy it, but it doesn't have the same psychological shift to it anymore. It's interesting.
It's funny is my favorite band is a band called Alter Bridge. And they got me through some really rough times in my teen years. I lost my brother, and that album just kind of got me through all that. And it's funny because I laugh at it now. I've seen them a handful of times live, and every single time there's a song called Blackbird and a song called Watch Over You. And every time I see them live, those songs will instantly get me in tears. I can listen to it 1,000 times in a row on the record and feel perfectly fine. But there's something about being in that arena or the theater with them and them playing that music where I'm just like, I'm bawling like a baby. And then on the drive home, I'll play on the radio and I'm like, I'm perfectly fine. It's really weird how that works. And maybe it's just kind of more of a coincidental thing. I'm not really sure.
No, man, I think there's something about the live energy, because it's not just you at that moment listening to the song, feeling emotional. I have to imagine, although I've never heard the song, that those around you at the concert, they've all heard the song. They enjoy the song the same way and they feel those emotions. And I feel like there's got to be some, I don't know this for a fact, this is just me guessing, there's some sort of chemical change. Well, I know there's a chemical change in the body, but maybe even in the air around us, maybe we get put off some pheromones or something crazy. I don't know, but we feed off of each other in those emotional moments. And you're sitting there, the music is blaring, you feel the bass kicking, you feel everything happening, and you sense the emotion from those around you, and it's just overwhelming. I've experienced that in church before, and that's kind of an interesting feeling as well, because I'm going, what am I doing, bro? I'm sitting here boohooing and I feel kind of moved to go to the front with everybody else too. This is weird. Like I sit at the house and, it was, although I did read the Bible from time to time, it wasn't like I sat there and that's all I thought about and got moved emotionally like that when I'm by myself. But you put me in church and you put me around people, and they're all boohooing, and then we're singing this soft, sad song, and whoo, son, it's on.
It's weird because I get the opposite, not the opposite, but you know, whenever I feel emotional in church, it isn't because of what everyone else is doing. I feel really alone, you know, and I feel isolated. I don't really feel like, you know, I'm having this group experience that we're all kind of, you know, heartbroken or having, you know, our hurtness is coming to the surface all at once. I feel like they're having one moment over on the other side of the building, and I'm over here, I'm by myself, and I feel isolated and broken myself. That's how I feel as well at the concerts. You know, it's like I feel like everyone else around me is rocking out and having a good time to these songs, and I'm over here crying like a baby. Maybe I need to see a therapist. Maybe you have a connection to a therapist I can talk to about it.
Get a little deep for me, bro. I don't. I do not have a license. You know, these are, again, guesses on my part here as far as what triggers us to shed these tears in these moments. I don't really know, but I do know a therapist. He's great. He's a podcaster too. He might be somebody good for you to talk to.
Yeah, we'll bring him on the show. We'll do a public session here, so that way it's free.
There you go.
Hey, so let's talk about your, you know, obviously you're doing podcast again. I want to remind everybody it's Larry Roberts with the One Big Win podcast. Where can people find you on the social media? I want to make sure we get that plugged in so that way people can go and download this. I love what you're doing. I love the message behind what you're doing. I have seen your daily affirmation stuff. You asked that earlier, and I just decided to respond to it, you know, 10 minutes later.
Oh, thanks.
You know, I've seen the stuff. I love it. So tell people where they can find you.
You can find me on Facebook at Larry N. Roberts. I had to throw the middle initial in there because there's a lot of Larry Robertses out there for some reason. But yeah, you can find me there, and you can find me at Big Win Pod on all the platforms as well. At Big Win Pod, BIGWINPOD. That is all the social media for the podcast itself. And you can find me everywhere. I mean, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, everywhere. So wherever you're socializing, come see me.
Absolutely. And you know, I really appreciate you doing this, man. This was a fun conversation. I really hope that some people got a couple of different things taken out of this. Now let me ask you this: with this new podcast that you're doing, One Big Win podcast.
Yes.
Obviously it's a lot different from the Readily Random podcast. What's one thing that you've learned doing this new podcast that you didn't really know about yourself doing the Readily Random podcast?
It's okay to be myself. I would always try to temper me, and I would try to present a certain me that I thought is what people wanted to listen to. This is what I see other podcasters doing. This is what I'm going to do. That doesn't work, man, because I'm faking it the whole time. You got to be yourself. You know, I got bagged on, which I got made fun of, okay, for my Supreme hat the other day from a friend of mine. He was from high school, and he hit me up on Facebook. He was watching my affirmation or one of my lives. He goes, bro, that hat. He goes, I don't think it looks anything like you think it looks. And I go, man, it may not, you know what? But it feels right to me. I love it. I love flat billed hats. I've been wearing them for years, and it just feels like maybe it just feels natural. I don't know what else to call it. So being genuine, being yourself, and just letting loose, man. Forget all of that putting on airs and trying to be Joe Rogan or trying to be Seth Godin or whoever it is that you're trying to be, you know. Don't be them, be you. And be genuine in what you do, and people will resonate.
You know, in the beginning of my career, I spent a lot of time trying to do what Ryan Seacrest does. You know, 102.7 Kiss FM, Ryan Seacrest, you know, I literally call myself Ryan Seacrest on my air checks. And I woke up one morning and realized I'm no Ryan Seacrest. You know, I don't have his money. I don't have his radio show. I don't have his audience. I don't have you know, talent aside, I you know, some people would say I'm better than Ryan Seacrest with what I did. Other people would be like, you have no chance. But I woke up one morning and was like, you know what I am good at is asking good questions. So let me lean into that a little bit more. And it's really important that people learn to stop chasing to be the next insert the blank here.
Right.
And really define and create your own path. And even like before we went on the air right now, I told you like this podcast was inspired by what Joe Rogan does. You know, he just gets some guys together, some girls together, and he just shoots the breeze.
Right.
And it honestly, it feels like the guy just shows up, introduces himself to whoever his guest is, and sits down and pushes record, you know, and has no plan. So I appreciate that what you learned and the advice in that too. one last question for you.
Sure.
If at the end of the day, people take one thing away from your podcasts, just in general, just one thing that people who are they scroll through it, click on it by accident, or they seek it out, whatever. What's the one thing you hope that people learn from the One Big Win podcast?
We all have that moment in our lives that could lead to that one big win. And the whole goal behind the show is for you to recognize that moment and take action and put it into motion. The rest takes care of itself. Once you find that moment, you put it into motion, you'll take a step closer and you'll even reach your own life mastery as long as you keep evolving, as long as you keep growing. And that's really what I want everybody to know is look for those moments, then take action when you find them.
Awesome. Larry Roberts, he is the host of the One Big Win podcast, available, I'm assuming, on all the major podcasting platforms.
Yes, everywhere you want to listen.
Awesome. And then you head over to bigwinpod.com for more information, or if you want to get a hold of Larry as well. All of his information is on his website. Larry, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. Go and download his podcast right now and subscribe.
Thank you so much, Ruben. This has been it's been a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. We got a little intense there for a couple of times, but I loved every minute of it, and I appreciate the opportunity to come on and share my story with you and your audience.
Great. I look forward to having you back on the podcast, hopefully soon, and we can talk about how the Readily Random LLC is doing and how you're doing in your solo career, man. I wish you the best of luck, man. 2021 is going to be the year.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Take care.